Kia ora, I'm Tracy.
Kia ora, I'm Nick.
We're going to talk to you about ring slings.
The ring sling was first invented by a man called Rainer Garner in Hawaii in 1981.
And then later on, Dr. William Sears bought the rights and began using them in America with some of his 8 children and popularised them in his books as well.
This is a ring sling. As you can see, it has some rings, a tail, and these can be open or closed, and 2 edges, which we're going to refer to as the top rail and the bottom rail.
So this is another kind of ring sling, very similar, metal rings. This one is a woven fabric and it has an open tail, so the fabric is just loose throughout and gathered here, as opposed to next one which has a sewn shoulder pad. This one also has metal rings, but these are a lighter aluminium, and they're a thinner, larger ring that suits the bulkier amount of fabric. Let's have a look at a couple of other slings. This one has wooden rings. We don't actually recommend wooden rings for a sling because they're generally not strong enough. So if you're going to make your own sling, it's better to try and source metal or nylon rings. Here's another ring sling, also with metal rings. These ones are quite small, but that's suitable for this type of fabric, which is lightweight. So it's quick dry and can be quite good in a warmer climate.
This sling works on the same principle as a ring sling, but instead of a ring, it's got a plastic buckle. Now these are pretty good overall, but you do need to watch them for wear and tear. You can see this one has got a crack in it. I prefer to wear the sling on my right shoulder, so I'm going to start by putting my left arm through it, like this. I'm sorting the rails out so that feeling around the back, making sure that the sling's not twisted. And I'm starting with the rings quite high on my shoulder, so that when I tighten it, they're going to come down into the correct position.
We'll show you more about that when we demonstrate with the babies, but we'd like to mention a couple of safety tips for using ring slings.
One of them is that as you're tightening, you're lifting up and pulling down and just making sure that baby's fingers aren't anywhere near the rings.
Another point is that sometimes the sling can put quite a bit of weight just on one side of your body, so it may be important to switch over and have it on the other shoulder at times just to help with that balancing.
Also, in regards to safety, is making sure that your sling is over your shoulder so that you're not getting a sore neck.
And finally, it's making sure that your sling is still up to the job, because if you use your sling as passionately as we did, eventually it will become worn out.
So it's a good idea over time to check for signs of wear on your sling, and you can see this is one that we use with our daughters for a number of years, and this is the kind of thing that happens eventually.
So all the slings we've been showing you so far have already been threaded. Let's have a quick look at threading a sling. This is the open-tailed one that we showed you earlier with a long piece of fabric. All you need to do is follow the fabric down, making sure it's not twisting, and get it right to the end. Take all of that fabric through both of the rings, pull through part way, fold it back and thread through just one ring. And just have a look and check that one rail goes all the way from one side, follows around to the same side and is not twisted through. And that sling's ready to use.
To tension the sling, just pull it down through the rings. To tension the top rail, pull up and out and over.
First of all, put the sling on and rest the buckles up a bit on your shoulder. Make sure your rails are spread, and you can tension it slightly so it feels like it's in the right space for your baby. Leave plenty of room to lower the baby in through the top rail. And then I'm ready for baby Layla. So this is Layla, hello gorgeous, who's 11 weeks old. But you can use this upright hold even with a brand new newborn baby. And I did that with my little 34-week early baby even. So when I'm ready to put Layla in the sling, I'm going to lift her up over my shoulder, both arms up nice and high. I reach up through the sling to find her feet, and as I'm lowering her down into that central position, I'm spreading the sling behind her. My hand is under her bottom. She's resting on my arm still as I lower her right down into the middle. And then I lean back slightly while I tuck that bottom rail nicely behind her knees and stretch the upper rail up behind her. I'm making sure her fingers are clear as I pull the tail down to tighten the whole sling. And once she feels snug at the bottom, I'm going to isolate the top rail, so up and over. And that pulls her in lovely and snug against me. It's sitting nicely over my shoulder here. It's not pulling on my neck at all. And she's actually wrapped on me rather than hanging off one shoulder. And I'm totally free to use my hands. So Layla's nicely snuggled in there. We can just recheck that she's in an ideal position by making sure that she's in the straddle squatting position with the bottom rail right at the base of her knees there and her hips slightly lower than her knees. Make sure she's nice and tight by pushing her against me, and if she doesn't move much then that's great, but if there's a bit of movement there you need to tighten the sling a bit more. Make sure the top rail is up round the base of her neck, or for a sleeping baby you can even pull it right up over their head to support their heads in against you. You can use this upright inward facing position even with a much older baby. So from this position we can easily move Layla down into a breastfeeding position if she decides she wants to have a breastfeed. So just loosening the sling by lifting the rings. I'm reaching inside the sling and I'm going to slide her bottom towards the rings as I gently ease her down into the sling. So as her bottom's into position, I can see how much space I need, if I need a little bit more slack there, and lower her down into the sling. Hello gorgeous. So that she's nicely tucked in there. Adjust as necessary. Adjust my clothing, free my breast, latch her on, and we're good to go. Make sure that the sling is coming right round under her bottom there so that she's really right down in it and that her back's nicely stretched out. She's trying to latch on. And then once she's finished feeding, we just bring her back to the upright position, supporting her bottom, sliding her back up here, sliding the sling around a little bit, and tension again. And we're back into the upright hold. A little bit of slack here, so we can just isolate that top rail, up and in. And there we go. To take her out of the sling, support her body with my hand, holding the top ring and releasing the tension, and then you can just lift the sling off as you lean back. And there she is.
To start, you want to check that you've got a reasonable spread of fabric through the rings, that you haven't got any bunching or tight spots here. That's really going to help later on when you're tightening it up. Also, this is your top rail and your bottom rail. These are the two kind of edges of the sling. You want to make sure that those are roughly equal. Now I'm right-handed, so I'm going to put my left arm through the sling. And I'm going to start with the sling quite high on my shoulder, because when I tighten the sling, the rings are going to come forward and down a bit into the correct finishing position. I'm just checking the two rails now. I'm just going to tighten that top rail a little bit and the bottom rail. And what you're trying to do is just tighten your top and bottom rails a little bit so that you form a pouch for the baby's bottom to sit in. And now we're ready for Ben. Okay, Ben. So I'm going to start with Ben up on my shoulder here. I'm going to reach up underneath the sling.
Mum.
Yeah. And pop his feet through. Well, Ben's quite a lot longer than... Yeah. Pop his feet through and bringing that top rail up, right up over his shoulders. And then I'm going to tighten the whole sling so that I've got him secure. And then I'm going to reach up and grab that bottom rail and get it right underneath between me and Ben so that he's sitting right in the pouch. Now I'm just going to slide it around a little bit so that he's on my hip. Now to get these rings back up in here, I'm just going to reach up under his bottom, pull the whole thing round, check that bottom rail again. If there's any slack here, I can pull up and over on that bottom rail to get it nice and tight. And then there's no way he can straighten his legs. Now I've got my hands free, Ben's happy, he can see the world, and we're good to go. There are going to be times when you want baby on your back, if you're doing the dishes or something like that and you need a little bit more room in front of you. So the first thing to do is to reach up between the sling and your baby and take the weight off the sling and shift your rings right up onto your shoulder. Now that I've got the rings nice and high, I'm going to check all my rails, make sure that they're nice and tight, because once baby's on my back I won't be able to see him. So I want the rail nice and high up under his knees, tucked right between me and baby. Put a little bit more tension on there, making sure that the top rail is firm across his shoulders and underneath his, across the back of his neck. And then what I'm going to do is spin Ben all the way around to my back, like that. Rings are in the middle of my chest and we're good to go. Now just to check, you can get a mirror or something and look in there and just make sure that that bottom rail is still nice and high up underneath his knees, so it's quite secure there. And Ben and I are good to go. Now, to get Ben out, the first thing to do, I'm just going to take some tension off the sling by lifting the rings here. And now I can get my hand easily underneath Ben's bottom and just get him up onto my shoulder. And out like that.
Kia ora, I'm Tracy.
Kia ora, I'm Nick.
And we're going to talk about pouches. So a pouch is basically just a loop of fabric that's been sewn with a seam that is slightly curved, and that's where your baby's going to sit into.
They come in different sizes. Here are two sizes, a medium and a large, made by the same manufacturer. As you can see, there's not a lot of difference between one size and the next, but that sizing is quite important because of the limited adjustability with a pouch, you need the right size for your baby.
And the right size for you. So if you and your partner are different sizes, you might need a couple of pouches.
The good thing is that pouches are quite cheap to buy and even cheaper to make, and you can download patterns from the internet.
So let's show you how to use a pouch. So to get this ready to go, you actually need to fold it in on itself to double it over. So just put my hand inside and fold that side through to meet the other side. And I'm lining the seam back up with itself there. Give it a little shake to get the other end to tuck in as well. Just tucks in. And then you've got the pouch ready to go and the opening here. So it's good to use these things on either side to spread the weight around, but initially you'll probably find it more comfortable to carry it on your dominant shoulder. So if you hold the pouch in your dominant hand with the opening away from you and thread your hand through over your head, and then it sits on your shoulder with the opening at the top, and the seams are currently down here, and I'll adjust those into the correct position depending on what sort of carry I'm going to do. Now we're going to demonstrate an upright, inward-facing carry with the pouch. We're going to show you with a newborn baby, but you can do the same carry with an older baby too. So here's my pre-folded pouch, and I've chosen to fold it with the padded rail on the inside, so that will put padding on the bottom rail for the baby's knees. So I hold it with my dominant hand over my other arm and spreading it onto my shoulder. Now I want to find the seam that at the moment is down by my hip and move it round to the centre. So just roll the whole thing through so that it's sitting in that central point and still resting up on my shoulder there. Then I'm going to reach inside and find that rail and open it down to create a pouch here for the baby to go into. And then I'm ready for the baby. And here's Ossian, who's 5 weeks old. So a wee bit bigger than a brand newborn, but same principles apply. So I'm going to roll Ossian in towards me and place him up over my shoulder. And I'm holding him nice and securely as I reach inside the pouch with my other hand to find his feet. Then I can just stretch the pouch open as I slide him down into that little space that we made before. Now I'm not letting go of him at all until I've really checked that I've got that pouch nicely spread right in under his knees. So I can spread his little feet up and stretch that bottom rail out until we feel like it's snugly behind his knees there. And you can see that the other seam, as we stretch that up, is pretty much in line with where the baby sits. So now we've got Ossian in a really nice supported straddle squat position, and he's nicely tucked in with the tension made by this fold down on the shoulder. He's actually got pretty good back support, but sometimes with a brand new baby there can be quite a lot of slack here, which would be a concern because it would mean that the baby could slump down and thereby close off their airway. So if you're concerned about that, you could use something like a folded up hand tail. Just make sure that it's only the same length from the baby's bottom to their shoulders. You don't want it pushing up towards their head and actually tipping their head forward. So you could take something like that, release the tension here and tuck it down inside the pouch if you needed to pad out the slack. But he's actually very secure in this hold at the moment. So we've got baby Ossian in a nice supported straddle squat position with good tension all around. But at some stage he might decide he wants to breastfeed, and we can breastfeed him in the pouch. So all I'm going to do is lift this top rail back up to create some slack at the top while I support his weight a little bit with my other hand. So then I've got some room here. I slide my other hand inside the pouch as I swing him down into the breastfeeding position. Make sure that his bottom is right inside the pouch. And then stretch the other rail out so he can drop down into position at the breast. Making sure that his little feet are coming out and he's right where you need him to be for breastfeeding. Even supported hands free. Once he's finished feeding, you want to bring him back into the upright position. So just leaning forward, lifting up, and then we're just readjusting his sling. So I'll just swing him back into that seam spot with the rails back under his knees, settling him back down into that seat. Once I'm happy with his position there, tension the top rail. Give him a little bit more headroom. Tension the top rail. And there we go. When Ossian's ready to get out of the pouch, simply release the top rail and free up his shoulders, reach under his arms, back onto the shoulder and free his little feet. And he's all out. Oh, good work, Ossian.
Now I'm going to show you how we'd use the pouch for an older baby. This is my pre-folded pouch, and I've got the opening facing away from me. This is the curved seam, so I'm having that at the bottom. And through. Get it all sorted so that it's sitting about mid-shoulder. Just checking around the back to make sure that it's not twisted. Folded there. Great. And then I'm just going to reach inside here and pull down the inner rail so that I've made a pouch ready to have Jonathan. And here's Jonathan, who is about 10 months old. Hi Jonathan, how are you going? I'm reaching up through the pouch, grabbing his feet. Yes. And we just slide him down into there like that. Spreading his legs a little bit and getting that bottom rail right behind his knees. Hi. I'm just checking that that rail's behind his knees, and then we're good to go. Okay, so with a baby that's anywhere from about 5 or 6 months old, they're probably going to want to start to see a little bit more of the world, and they've got a bit better neck control, as young Jonathan has here. But even so, it's quite handy to have their arms sort of tucked in a little bit like this, and just have that top rail high up across their shoulders for a bit more support. And to bring a little bit more tension on, to bring them in a little bit more, I can just push this down here, and that brings that top rail in a bit and just makes it feel a bit more secure. So to get Jonathan out, I just take the tension off that top rail and then get his arms out like this, and then we're going to put him on my shoulder. It's alright, Jonathan. And then pull the sling down, the pouch down, and then he's out and ready to go.